One of the things I like most about the Warhammer 40,000 universe is that, despite its enormous scale and often extreme concepts, it can still feel surprisingly grounded. That is why I often find myself wondering what the beings from this universe would look like if they actually appeared in the real world. And I am especially interested in the Primarchs. We all know that the Primarchs are incredibly powerful. But what does incredibly powerful actually mean? I want something a little more tangible. In this video, we are going to take a detailed look at the physical capabilities of a Primarch and try to imagine what they would be like if they existed in the real world. To keep the analysis simple and clear, we will temporarily exclude armor, weapons, and any abilities directly connected to the warp. Because as far as we know, the warp does not exist in our universe. Or perhaps the Emperor simply has not told us about it yet. We will focus only on their natural bodies, their size, weight, strength, durability, endurance, speed. Warhammer does not provide exact physical statistics for every Primarch, so some of the numbers in this video will be estimates based on their appearance, biology, and the feats described in the lore. And we will begin with the most obvious question. How large and heavy would a Primarch actually be? An average Primarch could stand around 3.2 meters tall, but they would not simply look like ordinary human beings enlarged to a much greater size. Their bodies would not have the tall, thin, and disproportionate build associated with human gigantism. Instead, their shoulders, chest, neck, and limbs would all be enormously developed. If we took a man who stood around 1.8 meters tall and weighed between 100 and 120 kilograms, then enlarged him proportionally to the size of a Primarch, his body would already weigh somewhere between 500 and nearly 700 kilograms. But as I said, a Primarch is not simply an enlarged human. Their bones would have to be much thicker, denser, and several times stronger than normal human bones. A significant part of their total body weight would also come from their enormous amount of highly developed muscle. Their chest would need to contain circulatory and respiratory systems powerful enough to support hundreds of kilograms of muscle operating at an intensity that the human body could never maintain. And that is before we even consider the unusual organs inside a Primarch's body, which are so complex that even Space Marine apothecaries do not fully understand them. Taking all of these factors into account, I believe an average unarmored Primarch could weigh around 950 kilograms. A large polar bear can reach a similar weight. But a Primarch would not simply be another creature weighing close to 1 ton. Their body was created to control that entire mass with extraordinary precision, while generating and withstanding forces that no natural creature on Earth could survive. And this is where their size begins to translate into strength. If a Primarch's muscles worked like ordinary human muscles, they would have to use most of their strength simply to move their own body. But in the lore, Primarchs can run, dodge, change direction, and fight so quickly that even Space Marines struggle to follow their movements. That means every bundle of muscle in a Primarch's body must generate far more force than any natural muscle tissue found on Earth. Their muscles are not simply large. The individual fibers would also have to be dense, tough, and durable enough to use all of that power without tearing tendons, breaking joints, or destroying their own skeleton. With a body like that, a Primarch could lift and throw ordinary vehicles, overturn armored transports, bend heavy steel, or tear open reinforced doors using brute force alone. And that power would not be concentrated only in their arms. Every punch would begin with the legs, then travel through the hips, back, and enormous shoulders before all of that force was delivered into the point of impact. A direct strike could shatter the bones of large creatures, deform metal, and send an ordinary person flying without the Primarch needing to use anything close to their full strength. Their ability to withstand damage would also be very different from that of a human. In heavily muscled areas such as the chest, shoulders, or thighs, I believe some small caliber handgun rounds might penetrate only a short distance before becoming trapped inside the muscle. They might even be deflected if they struck at an unfavorable angle. That does not mean a Primarch would be bulletproof. Heavy machine guns and weapons with greater penetrating power could still pierce their bodies and cause serious injuries. But against more ordinary weapons, a Primarch would be harder to bring down than any living creature currently found on Earth. Explosive strength is only one part of a Primarch's physical capabilities. What makes them truly dangerous is their ability to maintain that power for an extremely long time. No matter how strong a human body is, it will quickly begin to lose performance when forced to operate at maximum intensity. The muscles start running short of oxygen, the heart rate rises, and physical coordination gradually deteriorates. But a Primarch's body was created to function in a completely different way. Their two hearts, combined with circulatory and respiratory systems far superior to those of humans, would allow them to continuously supply enormous amounts of blood and oxygen to their massive muscles. As a result, they could run, climb, and fight for many hours without suffering a significant drop in performance. One of the clearest examples comes from the contest between Vulcan and the Emperor on Nocturne. After 8 continuous days of trials involving strength and endurance, Vulcan was still able to climb a volcano and hunt a gigantic salamander weighing several tons. While returning, the volcano erupted and Vulcan fell from a cliff. He was forced to hold onto the edge with one hand while still carrying the enormous body of the creature he had killed with the other, and he maintained that position for several hours. Earlier in the contest, Vulcan and the mysterious stranger had also held enormous anvils above their heads for half a day without either of them giving up. Of course, Vulcan was one of the strongest and most durable Primarchs. His individual feats should not be treated as an exact standard for all of his brothers. But despite the differences between them, every Primarch was created to personally participate in prolonged military campaigns. While ordinary soldiers would need to rotate, rest, and recover, a Primarch could continue moving and fighting for many hours. If the intensity of the activity changed over time, they might even continue for several days. Perhaps the strangest thing about the Primarchs is not their size or strength, but their speed. Normally, the larger and heavier a body becomes, the more difficult it is to accelerate, change direction, or come to a stop. But a Primarch does not move like a creature weighing close to 1 ton. In the lore, they can charge, dodge attacks, and reposition themselves so quickly that even Space Marines struggle to track their movements. Warhammer does not provide an official maximum running speed for the Primarchs. But based on their height, stride length, muscular power, and acceleration, I believe an average unarmored Primarch could reach around 100 to 130 kilometers per hour over a short distance. Primarchs particularly famous for their speed, such as Jagatai Khan or Fulgrim, could move even faster. During a short burst of maximum effort, they might exceed 150 kilometers per hour. Their brains processed information at an extraordinary pace, while their superhuman nervous systems and muscles instantly turned any decision into physical action with seamless agility. Lionel Johnson provides a clear example. Before he was discovered by the Imperium, the lion survived alone in the forests of Caliban and hunted great beasts, creatures dangerous enough to kill fully equipped knights. To fight creatures like that, the lion could not rely on strength alone. He also needed enough speed to avoid their attacks, reposition himself, and counterattack before the creature could adjust. Guilliman also demonstrated the extraordinary speed of a Primarch's perception during the Alpha Legion assassination attempt. When the Alpha Legion warriors fired their bolters at close range, Guilliman almost immediately recognized the muzzle flashes, identified the direction of the attack, and began responding within an extremely small fraction of a second. His perception was so fast that the events unfolding in front of him seemed to slow down. This does not necessarily mean that a Primarch could calmly watch a bullet flying toward them and then casually step out of the way. In many cases, they would react by reading the opponent's movements, recognizing the direction of the weapon, and beginning to evade before the projectile had even left the barrel. Either way, when this speed of perception is combined with their physical movement, a Primarch at close range would become an extremely difficult target to control. So, if an unarmored Primarch appeared on modern Earth, what could we actually do against them? In an unarmed confrontation, the answer is fairly simple. No fighter, soldier, or living animal on Earth could realistically stand against a Primarch. An ordinary person would be completely incapable of inflicting any damage on a Primarch. Handcuffs, batons, locked doors, barriers, and civilian vehicles would be utterly useless. Even knives and swords might only make a Primarch feel a slight sting, like the bite of a fire ant, that is assuming the Primarch simply stood still and allowed themselves to be attacked. Ordinary armed police would be no different. Their standard weapons would be incapable of causing any meaningful injury to a Primarch, who would be far too fast, strong, and durable for them to deal with. The officers might even be taken down before they had enough time to draw their guns. A well-prepared infantry unit would have a better chance, especially if the soldiers had enough distance and knew the Primarch's exact location. But ordinary rifles would be unlikely to seriously slow a Primarch down. Even after repeated hits, their reinforced bones, enormous muscle mass, redundant organs, and unnatural resistance to trauma could allow them to continue fighting almost normally. Heavy machine guns, anti-materiel rifles, explosives, and armor-piercing ammunition could cause meaningful injuries, but bringing a Primarch down would still require accurate and sustained fire. And the problem is that the Primarch would not simply stand there and allow you to do that. With a running speed exceeding 100 kilometers per hour in short bursts, potentially surpassing 150, a Primarch could erase what seemed like a safe distance within seconds. Their extraordinary reflexes could allow them to evade incoming fire. And even when the volume became too dense to avoid everything, they could still identify and dodge the most dangerous attacks from high-powered anti-materiel rifles such as the Barrett M107A1 or Accuracy International AX-ELR. Armored vehicles and tanks would give the military a more protected firing platform, although they would become extremely vulnerable if the Primarch reached them. Helicopters flying low enough to attack would still be within a Primarch's reach. They could hurl chunks of concrete, steel beams, vehicle parts, or heavy wreckage with enough force and accuracy to smash a cockpit, destroy a rotor, or cripple an engine. Modern aircraft would represent one of the most effective weapons against a Primarch. Fighter jets, attack aircraft, and armed drones could combine speed, altitude, precision-guided missiles, and modern anti-tank weapons to strike from multiple directions, while remaining extremely difficult for an unarmed Primarch to approach. Although actually tracking and landing a clean hit would still be extremely difficult. In fact, even within the lore, Primarchs have been overwhelmed through numbers, firepower, and organization. The lion was once seriously wounded by the Knights of Caliban. Angron was captured by the people of New Syria, implanted with the butcher's nails, and ultimately failed to defeat the planet's entire military by himself. An unarmored Primarch would be the most dangerous close-range combatant ever to appear on Earth. But they still would not be a god capable of destroying an entire army alone. So while a Primarch could easily overpower humans at close range, destroy vehicles, and wipe out smaller military units, they could still pose a major challenge to modern armed forces. But in the end, they would most likely be captured or killed. And everything we have analyzed so far concerns only their natural body. Once a Primarch puts on armor created specifically for them and carries weapons from the 30th millennium, the situation changes completely.